Hi everyone, welcome back to the Red Path. My name's Jack. This is episode 13 of WAAC Weekly, the show where we look at Team Red Path news as well as world eaters out in the world. Okay, so we'll start as always with World Eaters Tournament Roundup. It's a pretty big one. This is obviously the first week where the Codex has been in majority play. Like last week, there were a couple of events, but mostly it was still the old Codex because it was release day. It's been a week now, so there's been a pretty big upsurge in popularity, I would say. The first mostly for a week with the new Codex. As predicted, a massive upsurge in popularity. The bandwagon is heaving, and that's a good thing. It's great. So overall, there were 131 games, which is probably the biggest week yet. For context, when there were 8 people at LVO, there were 78 games that week, so 131 games, and a massive 78 wins, which is a 60% win rate overall. That's before I split out old and new book. So with the new book only, 121 games, of which 72 wins, so 61% win rate on a much larger sample size than last week. Once again, I'm going to focus on the new book this week because we want to look at what's good and help guide list building and stuff like that. So there were 3 GT performances, a 4-1, which we'll get on to, a 3-2, and a 1-4. And in RTTs, there was a massive 35 RTT performances. So a 4-0, which is, it was labelled as GT, but it was only 4 rounds, so I'm not really sure. 6 3-0s, and I think 5 of those were event wins. 1-2-1-0, so a draw. 13 2-1s, which is really good, and then 12 1-2s, which is also happened. As a note, and based on the apparent strength of the Codex, I know I focused on sort of going positive in recent weeks, so anyone that's come out with an above 50% win rate of an event, so 3 2s, 2 1s, the odd 4-1, that kind of thing. So that was the fairly arbitrary line I drew. Looking at the apparent strength of the new Codex, I'm going to be focusing on the top cut of results a bit more, just to save each episode being an hour and a half long each. So, whereas, 2-1, 3-2 plus was kind of the arbitrary line that I drew. Standards are going to be a bit higher for this book, so because I don't really want to go through the 13 2-1s, because I think everyone will get a bit bored of that. So I'm going to be looking for this video at there are a couple of Team Red Path performances. I'm going to look at the 4-1, the 4-0, the 6 3-0s, because there was a decent amount of list variation as well. So we're going to look at all of those. Cool. So Team Red Path news. As I mentioned, there were two members of the ITC Team Red Path out and about this week. I was one, but Michael Croy, again, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Mikey C in the Discord, massive performance at the Laughing Dragon February RTT in Washington State, finished at 3-0, second in a 15-player RTT. So fantastic effort. So picked up wins 76-58 against Ravenwing. Really good, because Ravenwing are pretty meta at the moment and faster than World Eaters. So really strong result there. 81-65 win against Custodes. Great. And then a close fought 97-89 win against Drukari in his last round. The list isn't in BCP, so I'm not going to be able to show it on the screen. I have a screen grab because he did post it in the Discord. So he's got Lord Invocatus, I would assume with a Warlord trait. Khorne, which is always good to see, and is something that I want to test, but he's not quite made his way into my list yet. 2 squads of 5 Berserkers with Eviscerators, a 9-man squad of Berserkers with Eviscerators and an Icon, 10 Jackals with a Skull Smasher and an Icon. So the Skull Smasher is the big 2 times attacks, damage 2 on the Dishonored. 2 squads of 3 8-bound, presumably for Invocatus. A Hellbrute with a Multi-Melter and Heavy Flamer in the fist. And then 2x1 spawn, 2 Molophines, which is good to see, because everyone's been trashing them recently, I think it's fair to say. So with the Lash Tendrils, that's the 6 attacks damage one on top of the D3 plus 3 fists. 2 Rhinos, and then 2 War Dog Executioners with Heavy Stubbers and Precision Cruelty. Precision Cruelty is 6s to wound, get an extra AP and extra damage. So damage 4 auto cannons, damage 2 Heavy Stubbers if you roll 6s to wound, which is a nice multiplier. I did look at Precision Cruelty. It is one of the things I kind of want to try. But it'd be interesting to see how much it swung the game a bit, I guess. It feels a bit unreliable for me, but I know not just Michael has been looking at Precision Cruelty as a go-to for War Dogs, because a lot of people are looking at War Dogs at the moment. So as I say, 3-0 for Mikey at the Laughing Dragon February RTT, coming second. Really strong start to the new codex. Really good to see. So then up next, I'm just going to touch on it. The other team member in action was me this weekend. I went to a GT in Brighton on the south coast of the UK. It was a 28-player GT on GW terrain. I managed a 4-1. And my wins were high enough that it netted me 3rd place. So we are going to do a separate video on it, because I think it could benefit from a little bit more of a deep dive on some thoughts on my list, what I took, what I feel worked, what I feel didn't work, and just generally thoughts about the codex. I think Dara's going to be on that one with me, because I know he's got a major coming up next week. So time of recording Saturday, a couple of days, 3-4 days time. So he's going to interview me about that, and then I'll interview him about his next week, hopefully. But yeah, I feel like it bears a little more detail, just because it is sort of lived experience. Cliff notes are: I had Angron. I was not running the Invocatus Bum Rush list. I had Angron. I was only running 9 8-bound of various flavors. I did run 2 War Dog Executioners as well. And they were worthy offerings, so they're +1 to hit against characters, vehicles, monsters, and if they killed one of those, they count as favoured, so they get the unlockability, which I ran one of Mirror of Fates, which is CP regen, and the favoured ability is like turn a hit, wound, or save roll to a 6 once per battle round, which I forgot every single game, which is great, but yeah, what can you do? I'll remember next time, hopefully. But without further ado, we're going to go on to some of the other incredibly strong performances out in the world. So as I mentioned, there were 5 3-0s and a 4-0 to go through, including 5 event wins of those 6. So yeah, a bit more success than we're used to, I think. So up first is Luke McCarthy, who had a strong 3-0 performance at the East Coast Gamers RTT in New Jersey, in the US. So 19 players, and he finished second. He got 156 win against World Eaters in the first round. That World Eaters list was an Angron and Scarbrand list. So that was pretty fun. Lots of no fallback in that list. But then, do you really want to fall back if you're doing the World Eaters mirror anyway? Followed by a 71-56 win against Admech, a little bit closer. A Gunline Army, which been speculated the Gunline Army is the hard counter to World Eaters as they are now. Clearly not that hard of a counter, although he did restrict his scoring a little bit. And then third round was a 132 win against Grey Knights. So 3 really strong performances. Obviously 271 out of 300 is really strong. Finishing second, also really good. So he has got Invocatus with his Warlord trait. So that's the 2 pre-game moves on Core. The Berserker Glaive on the World Eaters Lord on Juggernaut, which is hilarious, especially if you pop the Exploding Sixes Blood Tide ability on top of that. You get triple Exploding Sixes. I ran that Juggerlord last night with Berserker Glaive and got 19 hits from 8 attacks, which is just funny. He blended the Swarm Lord, which is quite funny because it also gets him up like quite high strength. I think it gets him to like strength 9, which is, although he doesn't ignore invulns, if you just spike a few 6s, like it's gonna kill stuff. And then what's he got? 25 berserkers, 4 of them with icons and eviscerators, but all of them have eviscerators. 3 squads of 4/8 bound. I know some people are moving away from the 5-5-3 into the 4-4-4 now to just spread out pressure a little bit more. And also, I think it's been recognised that 5 is just overkill. It kills anything that it touches. And so the only real benefit to having 5 is if you can multi-charge things, and a good opponent isn't going to let you do that, basically. So a 4 is still going to kill most things into a hard target unless you roll badly, which I have stories. Yeah, so then 3 squads of 3 Exalted 8 bound for the extra strength. Everything has the damage 3 on the champions, which seems to be the way we're going. 3 individual spawn, 2 rhinos. So this is very close to the cookie cutter, I think, vanilla list. In fact, I think it might exactly be that. It might exactly be that. I think the vanilla list was 3x5 initially, but I know he's moving away from that now. I think he's moving more towards a 3x4 instead. And then either adding a Juglord or another Berserker squad in there, which is basically what this list has done. So a really strong list. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this kind of archetype a lot, and a lot more over the coming weeks. Well done to Luke. As I said, second place. It is nuts that this is the the list we're going through first, because it's not the event win, and we have 5 event wins this week. That's insane to me, given where we were with our old book. So up next is Lachlan Rigg. He went 4-0 at the Dawn of War 40k GT series, a 30-player, what I've termed RTT Plus in Western Australia. He won the event, as I said. All of these now are event wins, which is insane. So he started off with a 98-45 win against Black Templars. He had a 94-30 win against Born Soldiers Astra Militarum, which is, again, another gunline army that he's smashed. 156-2 against Grey Knights, poor Grey Knights. And then another 85-71 win against Born Soldiers Astra Militarum. Incredible performance, especially against 2 of the armies that are potentially, well, as I say, have potentially been speculated as Beaman lists against World Eaters. So in his list, this is bang on, sort of. Well, not quite, I guess. So Invocatus with his Warlord trait, a 5-4 and a 3, presumably a 5 and a 4 for the pre-game move, and then the 3 as a backup. And I'd imagine it's a 4 to save points, basically. 3 squads of Exalted for the heavy hitting stuff. 4 squads of 5 Berserkers. I think that's where he's made a cut as well. 3 individual spawn, only 1 Rhino. So that is more places he'd cut to make way for the War Dogs at the bottom. So War Dog Brigands, my opinion is still undecided. I think it's probably 6.5 between Brigands and Executioners, in my opinion. There are some matchups where one is better and some matchups where the other is better, and it really depends on your local meta. If it's a really varied meta, you can take either and it will probably be fine. It does look like he has kitted these out for an Elf and Astra Militarum meta with Dark Forging. That is the Strength 6 damage 2 Stubbers on top, and they can ignore Lookout Sir. So I was sort of memeing about with them a while back. Never played them into Guard or Eldar, Elves of any kind. I could see it working, and I imagine it came in clutch in the 2 Guard games he had. And obviously, Strength 9 Melter is pretty nice against Strength 9 Melter that is 34-inch range as well. Is pretty nice into all those T8 guard tanks and T9 guard tanks. The Rogue Dawn is T9, I think. And then obviously the Chain Cannon, Strength 6, so 2s into all the same good targets that Dark Forging is getting to. It'll rip apart Eldar boats. Dark Eldar boats or Harlequin boats. It will kill troops in the open with ease. And it just helps you like get ahead on the trade game, I think. While the thermal spear will give you some way to touch like hard targets that you can't otherwise get to. Yeah, so I spent a while on that list unintentionally, but again, a theme here. Pre-game move, loads of A-bound. That's what the internet has taught us to expect. Next up, we have Schuyler Quinn. Sorry, correct me below if you're watching at all and I've got it wrong. Sorry. So 3-0 at the Bad Wolf February 40k tournament, a 20-player RTT in Louisiana in the US. A 68-65 win against the Custodes army that was quite funny. It was basically Trajan, and then all the rest of his points were spent on individual Sagittarium units of 3. Fine. Close win. Clearly pushed him quite close. He also had an 86-68 win against Ultramarines and a 90-31 win against Space Wolves. So this list is, I think, the first. This list is the first one with Angron. Starts on 5 CP as well. So he's got the Juglord with Glaive. He's got Invocatus just because Invocatus is just a good data sheet. A Bare Bones Jackal squad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 20. So 20 Berserkers, all with Icons and Eviscerators. 2 squad of 3 8-bound and a squad of 3 Exalted 8-bound. 2 Hellbrutes making an appearance. Paying for the Combi Bolters as well. Is that the right points cost? I feel like that's not the right points cost. 105 points for a Hellbrute with a multi-melter. Pretty sure we still have to pay for multi-melters. That might be... But the Rhinos have extra combi bolters for 5 points. I don't know. I feel like that's wrong. Because I think we have to pay for the combi bolter and the multi-melter, which would take that to 115. But I don't know. 2 Hellbrutes, cool to see them. I think they do have legs out next to Invocatus and the Juglord. Them moving 8 really takes away a lot of my like complaints that I have about them. Moving 6 just feels really bad for them. So then 2 individual spawn, 2 Rhinos, and Angron. Seeing Angron at work in the US is good because I know terrain is patchy, shall we say, and that reception for Angron in the US in particular has been quite muted. People have dismissed him fairly early, so it's good to see him getting some wins on the board. So up next we have Red Powell of US Army Esports. He was at the Geek Shack February tournament, a 25-player RTT in New Mexico in the US. 3 really strong wins. He got a 130 win against Freebooters Orcs, a 97-50 win against Heirloom Weapons Swift as the Wing Guard, which I think is you can reroll one of the wound dice and also just extra movement on everything. And then a 146 win against Black Templars. Yeah, I mean that's 297 out of 300 possible points. That's really good. The theme I'm sensing is that melee armies, in particular slow melee marine armies, have problems into us now, which is unsurprising in the slightest because we have fight on death now. So yeah, two bare bones Juglords for the extra movement, I'm assuming. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squads of berserkers. That's 40 berserkers, all with icons and eviscerators. 3 individual chaos spawn, 4 rhinos with extra combi bolters, and Angron with his warlord trait. It's a glorious list. It's really simple, and it has loads of trade units. 8 squads of berserkers is going to start trading up as soon as you start getting blood tide points. And rhinos just add that extra layer of defense, especially against melee marine armies, right? So, it is so. And again, Angron in the US, so it's so good to see Angron doing really well in the US meta, and especially with just a really what could be considered a very simple list. I mean, it is a very simple list, right? It's 40 berserkers, 3 spawn, 4 rhinos, Angron, and 2 characters. I think, and the fact that it scored 297 out of 300, I think potentially illustrates player skill, and the place that it has in our new book. So, because I'd imagine a lot of people will look at the list and say that's nothing special. But Berserkers getting out of Rhinos going, 11 inches and then charging? Pretty good, especially when you have Angron running up the table next to them. It's a very fluffy list as well, actually. So obviously a really strong performance. Red won the event with his 3-0. So up next we are off to Spain. So Manu Vlad went 3-0 at the Warhammer 40k Kingdom RTT, a 28-player event in Madrid, Spain. It used WTC scoring, so that's why the scores next up are going to be a little different. So he had a 14-6 win against Death Skulls, a 20-0 win against Chaos Demons, and then a 17-3 win against Death Skulls again. So played a lot of orcs, which we are quite good into, depending on the list. So Invocatus, Demon Prince, which is the first time we've seen one of those. They're still decent, especially now that we don't have to pay for the mark. They are pretty much the same, just cheaper. And obviously we can't load them up with Warlord traits and relics anymore, but they're still decent, I think. We've got 10 Jackals, bare bones. We've only got 15 Berserkers, all with icons and Eviscerators. We've then got 15 8-bound, 9 Exalted 8-bound, Lacerators, but not the double chain fists. It's a weird choice. Because you get one more attack at damage 2 rather than just having damage 3 on your normal attacks. I don't think there's a situation where you don't hit the damage 3. Maybe it was an oversight. So then there's 3 spawn, 2 rhinos for the berserkers. And Invocatus is the warlord. So although it hasn't paid for the warlord trait. Maybe he has paid for the warlord trait. Who knows? A fairly solid list. It trades. What's it trade? It's got a Demon Prince in for and Demon Prince and Jackals in for the extra squad of Berserkers, I think. There's something else missing from that list. 165, 235. Oh, it's 2 more squads of Berserkers. So the cookie cutter list is drop the Jackals and the Demon Prince and add 2 more squads of Berserkers. And one of them doesn't have an icon. That's the that gets this list to basically the net list, right? It's everyone knows what that does, right? Weird that he hasn't paid for the Warlord trait. That may be an oversight. He may have paid for the Warlord trait, in which case this list makes a lot more sense. Even if it doesn't, Invocatus just yeets 8-bound up to trade and Berserkers up to trade. Demon Prince actually gives them rerolls, so that's something we don't necessarily have access to otherwise. So that's pretty good too. And then finally, we had one more 3-0 list that was Stephen Box from Vanguard Tactics at the Outpost RTT in Sheffield. Went 3-0, won the event. It was a 34-player event, so decent sized RTT. First game was a 134 win against Imperial Fists. Second game was a 97-35 win against Death Guard. And then final game was a 145 win against Nihilak Necrons, which I think is what people are pivoting to now that the Obsec dynasty has been broken, fixed, whatever, depending on which side you were on. Now that the Obsec tradition has been made all-consuming so that you can't take it along with the pre-game move. The Nihilak one is Obsec, but you have something else on top of it, but I can't remember what it is. Yeah, so anyway, that's a tangent. So another really strong performance. Obviously, Stephen Box is a pretty good player. He is well known for playing melee armies quite well. 297 out of 300 again. Really strong. Yeah, so Stephen's list was Lord Invocatus, but not with his Warlord trait because he ran Angron. Only 10 Berserkers in his list. Then 10 8-bound, so 2 squads of 5. 3 squads of 3 Exalted 8-bound, 2 Spawn, 1 Rhino for his Berserkers. Angron with his Warlord trait, and then 2 Wardog Executioners with Worthy Offerings, which is exactly what I ran. So, yeah, really strong list. Obviously, he's dropped some his list is actually very similar to mine. Drop 2 squads of berserkers and a rhino to bump the 8 bound up to 5s and to fit 2 extra squads of exalted in. That's potentially a good shout because I think it still probably does give you around the same unit count for trading, which is something that I found myself struggling with a little bit at the weekend. So, and obviously Exalted 8 bound and 8 bound are far killier without buffs than berserkers. So, yeah, that's good to see. So yeah, there's lots to be excited about. I think there's a roughly even split with of the top list with Angron and Invocatus warlords. Although I'll get onto that. I've got some nice conditional formatting to show everyone. The Berserker Glaive Lord or Juggernaut has been making an appearance. Instead of bumping the 8 bound squads up to 5, people have been sticking at 3 or 4, and adding a Berserker Glaive Lord just as a sort of precision, I guess, beat stick. A lot of damage to attacks potentially if you spike even 1 or 2 6s. Berserk's very good. Everyone's got a lot of them. People do seem to be going with the damage 3 options on the champions for both regular 8 bound and exalted 8 bound. So dual lacerators over the chain glaive, because I think we don't really need too many more volume damage 1, but it's something we have in abundance. So that seems like a wise choice. The dual chain fists on the champion for the exalted 8 bound for damage 3 at strength 10, also real fucking nice. War dogs are still being tested. Opinion is still very split. It does seem to come down to personal preference or the meta. Both executioners running worthy offerings, so +1 to hit against big stuff, or brigands with dark forging, so sniper stubbers, are still being tested. And then, as promised, my matrix. So this is just something I tracked together this morning, looking through the lists to see what kind of commonalities there were. So this is taken from the 6 lists that went undefeated, 7 lists that went undefeated, and then my list, which was 4 and 1. So anyone who went better than 3 and 2, basically, or better than 2 and 1. Yeah, so I mean, you can kind of see what the themes are, right? Absolutely, the start of any list should be 10 berserkers, 2 spawn, and a rhino, by the looks of that. People are taking Invocatus even if they're not taking his warlord trait. 7 out of 8 lists had him. 15 berserkers, 6 8 bound, probably a good idea too. And then probably want to be looking at 20 berserkers, 3 exalted 8 bound, probably 2 rhinos if you're taking that many berserkers at that point. More than half the list also took 3 spawn instead of 2. I mean, I don't think that's anything that I've said there will be a shock. The interesting thing to note is that only half the list did take Invocatus' warlord trait and the other half took Angron. Which is interesting given the internet being so all aboard the Alpha Strike hype train with Invocatus. And I know it's not quite that simple, but like being all aboard the Invocatus warlord trait hype train. It's interesting that in fact Angron does have play and is still good. Because I think, as we said before full release, he does just have a good stat line. Like, he kills stuff. He has a lot of attacks. And even if he doesn't kill stuff, he still takes fire off stuff. And I know he's not that hard to kill, but people do still have to shoot him with a fair amount of stuff. Like, he's toughness 7 with 18 wounds and a 2-up, 4-up. If you spike on 4-ups, he's suddenly sticking around for like 3 turns longer than he potentially should. And as someone who's played against into a lot of Harlequins and Tau that roll a lot of fucking 4-ups, it gets real annoying. And that's on a combat monster that can blend any single unit in the game. I had Angron stomp kill rigs on his own twice in 1 round, both times. And the second time he killed the kill rig as well as something else. So, like a whole nother squad. Yeah, like, he is still good. So yeah, I think there is a genuine consideration to be made when you're writing the list, if you are just going to go for Ups all 8 bound with Invocatus, or if you do want to run Angron, you can and still do well with him. It's just about how you use him. Turn 1 charge is potentially a trap, because most missions that'll be an 8-inch, because most missions have 24 inches apart deployment zones. He moves 16 to if you frontline your opponent frontlines, that's an 8-inch charge, which is not the best. It's not the worst with the reroll, because you probably will have CP turn 1, but it's definitely not the best. So the way to use him is hide him behind a true line of sight blocking piece of terrain, if it's available, and yeah, shoot him forwards or use him as zone denier. My last game at the weekend, I used him as like a zone threat, and it kept my opponent off the middle objective for the whole game, pretty much. Yeah, I think there's it's not as cut and dry as certain people are trying to make out, is my opinion. Yeah. So with that, I'll try and put something like this together every week, just so we can keep track of how units are coming in and out of favor, and like what kind of quantities of units are coming in and out of favor, what stuff's being spammed, what stuff's not. Yeah, I think it'd be quite useful to keep track of. As for the great game, the rankings are still hidden. I can only still see the 22 rankings. So if anyone knows a way to see the 2023 rankings, hit me up. Yeah. So as I said, me and Dara will be recording something on my specific tournament performance this weekend. Going through the games, learnings, list tweaks, that kind of thing. That should be out over the weekend, hopefully, but we'll see. So I guess the last thing is just join the Discord, join the conversation. We have some alright players there, and then also Dara. Like, comment, subscribe to all the good YouTube stuff. We're looking to grow the channel always. Tell your friends, especially if they're new to World Eaters. We've got a lot of getting started stuff coming. We've got a lot of unit specific analysis. We're going to be updating some of the older videos so that they're compatible with our new codex. So just stay healthy, stay safe.